Right now, thousands of indigenous remains and sacred items are sitting inside of museums and universities, including right here in Houston, but they aren't on display.
Yeah, some of the items were unearthed, stolen, and then kept for decades. But a little-known federal law is starting to change some things. So take a listen here as I share more on how Native American tribes are gaining more legal power in the fight to get back their ancestors and their belongings.
We have knife sheaths.
Inside the Hall of Americas, you see beadwork, baskets, and stories celebrating indigenous culture from the Arctic all the way to South America to Houston.
We have Karankawa people, the Atakapa, Ishak, San. We also have the Caddo. A lot of people came through, the Alabama Kushara.
But some belongings are now out of sight, deemed sacred by tribal communities who say they were never meant to be on display.
Anyone can imagine how they would feel if their relatives were being held in an institution, their bones were being pulverized to do radiocarbon testing.
Ray Hallbritter is the leader of the Onida Indian Nation in New York and is actively working to repatriate indigenous remains or ancestors and sacred objects to the tribe.
We know that museums, agencies, universities have identified about 128,000 ancestral remains in their collections.
Maggie Green with our ABC station in Chicago says data shows this includes a staggering 4.5 million sacred belongings, all of which were acquired in various ways, such as urban development and looting. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, also known as NAGPRA, was established in 1990 and requires museums, universities, and other government-funded entities to catalog, identify, and return ancestors and belongings to the tribes they came from. In January, federal restrictions tightened, giving tribes more legal power to stop ancestors and items from being displayed without tribal consent, forcing places like Chicago's Field Museum to make very quick adjustments. This also affected some belongings at the Houston Museum of Natural Science.
Out of an abundance of caution, we decided to deinstall or take off display a rattle that might have a specific meaning in ceremonial context.
The museum estimates they have at least 70 ancestors and belongings waiting to go home. Reunification is the goal, but NAGPRA prohibits DNA testing, a method that is controversial in the Native community.
We work with our paperwork, the documentation that came along with the collection. We look for regions where the donor traveled, worked, and obtained belongings, sometimes, and this goes back 100 years or more.
According to the Federal Register, the Army Corps of Engineers' Galveston district has 13 ancestors and 24 belongings, and Rice University is listed in possession of 5 ancestors and 11 belongings, which the document states are missing and that the university is trying to find. In a statement to ABC 13, Rice confirms the university returned 5 ancestors to the Tonkawa tribe of Indians of Oklahoma. As for the 11 missing belongings, they say, quote, "We have no record of ever possessing these items." Rice was not able to share any further details. Meanwhile, ABC 13 reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers and was unable to obtain a response.
I recognize these from the Hopi tribe.
Through careful discussion and coordination with tribes across the country, repatriation is possible, but it's a painstakingly slow process.
In the last 20 years, we've returned about 90 of our ancestors back to us. We've, through sacred ceremonies and spiritual ceremonies that is not open to the public, returned them to their resting place, to their home.
Houston Museum of Natural Science sends letters regularly to tribes trying to make a connection. Dr. Van Turenhout says the work being done is for one reason.
It is the right thing to do, so there's the answer. These belongings do not belong to us.
And Charlie, so a lot of history there. I do want to ask you real quick. So when these items, sacred items, are returned, what then happens to them?
So that's a great question. So, you know, throughout the process that you just learned about here, once they are given back to the tribes, there's actually different ceremonies and sacred practices that are used to honor the ancestors or the items. And in some cases, they are reburied and put back in their ancestral homelands.
Where they belong.
Exactly. So, you know, and I think that that is the end goal here, is to reunite the ancestors structures and the sacred items with where they belong, where they should go. So
Okay.
it's interesting covering this piece. I learned a lot during it. Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you.